All right. Welcome to another Empire's Comics interview series online. Tonight, we have the second half of a creative team that I talked to a while ago. We have got Joseph Corallo here joining us, the writer on She Said Destroy. Welcome to the channel, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We talked to Liana just a little while ago, and it was a great time. We contacted her because the book has done really well. I've had a chance to read it. I enjoyed it, and we wanted to get some perspective on it. And then she said, "Hey, you got to talk to Joe," which I thought was great. I was like, "Well, can you put me in touch with him?" And here we are. That worked out very well. So yeah. Let's go back a little bit before we get to the new stuff, because it's doing really well here in the shop. We've actually had to do reorders on the trade after the first batch sold out. Nice. So in fact, we have a little vault section over there. Nice. Where it's on display, because you guys have been doing great things over there, and you have really been making kind of a splash on the indie market here.
That's awesome.
So let's go back to the beginning. When was it that you knew you wanted to do something that was involving comic books?
Like the first time I even thought about doing anything in comics at all.
Or maybe even what was there a first love of comics, or was it something that you grew up with?
Yeah, sure. So I actually got into comics because of Sonic the Hedgehog, oddly enough. I was with my mom at Kmart when I was in like 3rd grade. And I was a fan of the games, and I saw they had Sonic comics. So it was issue 28 of the Archie comics run. And I got that, and then I started collecting them. Like, that's when it started to be like, oh, there's more issues, when I found out about like comic shops, and I started going to those to pick up back issues and get further issues. And then I mostly stuck with that until more like high school. And high school is when I really started to get into Marvel and started reading stuff like Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, and all that.
Well, I do like the way you remember not only the first issue that you got, it's that Sonic comic stuck with you, but I did like the way that story finished, because when you were like, oh, and I got into high school, I was expecting and I stopped reading, and you're like, no, I just intensified it. I picked it up.
Yep.
Well, that's so it's been a part of your life for quite some time. Now, back then, did you have like a binder full of scripts or ideas and things like that?
I had a friend of mine, Brian, that I was close with in like middle school, elementary school, all that. And we never worked on comics together, but we started doing, like, we kind of dabbled in like that fan fiction stuff of like, oh, what else would you do with like Sonic? And we were also big fans of Mega Man. And then, of course, Archie did the Mega Man Archie Sonic sort of crossover a few years or so ago. So we did stuff like that. And then once I got into high school, I started dabbling more in creative writing and was thinking of stuff for scripts, but I really didn't settle on writing comics till I was out of college. So like around, let's say like 2010 is when I really started to be like, I need to write comics. I was working on writing and essay writing and short prose and things like that. But around 2010 is when I decided like I really want to write comics.
So did you go to school for English?
No, I went to school for, got a dual degree in poli-sci and history with a minor in philosophy. So it was a lot of essay writing.
Okay.
Yeah, but I took creative writing courses in high school and college.
Okay, and the fact that you say there's a lot of writing must have helped, because when you did decide to jump in, you've done editing as well.
Yeah, some of my first stuff was really editing. I gotten some short comics published in some anthologies. I had a short in the Geeks Out Presents Power anthology. Margins Publishing did a benefit after the Pulse nightclub shooting. That was Our Heart Still Beats, Volume 2. I had a one-pager in that. And I ended up doing editing as like my first real big thing, was with a Mine anthology to benefit Planned Parenthood that I did with Molly Jackson. And, I sort of dived in head first because I had never done professional editing of comics before that. And then I decided my first gig was going to be co-editing an anthology that was 304 pages with about 150 contributors.
And there were some big name contributors on this thing as well. Like, I mean, wasn't Neil attached to it, and Gail Simone?
Yeah, we had.
To name among the, I was looking at the list, and it just went on.
Oh yeah, we have Wheezy and Nocenti. We got some people outside comics like Amber Benson, Mara Wilson, Frank Connick.
Tara. So then how did you get hooked up with that? I mean, that you're coming in editing such a major project without having done, you said you've only had a couple short stories. What got you involved in it?
I had self-published comics since about 2011. And nothing major, nothing that really went anywhere, because I had no idea what I was doing. But I feel like that's a lot of people's stories in comics. Like, I didn't know what I was doing for 5 or so years, and then I kind of figured it out. One of the first books I self-published, I worked with an artist, Danny Luckert, who has gone on to do Regression with Cullen Bunn at Image, and now he's doing Red Mother at Boom.
Nice.
So he really went on to do some great things, but a lot of it was going to shows for years, just networking, meeting people. I wrote for multiple different sites. I was doing reviews, interviews. I had a column at this site Comic Mix for a long time, which is who published mine. So I had a lot of experience in those circles. I had been able to network and meet a lot of people, so people sort of knew who myself and Molly were when we were jumping into this, and that really helped a lot.
That is nice. And the concert can be a rough gig. You gotta work your butt off on that thing. And those small press things you talked about, mm-hmm. Can we find those anywhere? Like, is it still available, or did you just sell out and then you were done?
I mostly sold out and then I was done. I have PDF copies of some of the stuff still around, so I might be able to send you a PDF of one of them if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I'd love to see it. But as far as everybody else who's going to watch this, it's not out there at all.
It's not out there at all, but I did do a short comic for the Margins Dates Volume 3 anthology with an artist, Robbie Barrett, who is one of the artists I worked with on one of the self-published comics I did. So it's the same creative team, if people are interested in that. And we're really proud of that story, too. So if people are familiar with Margins Publishing, it's a very small press, queer-focused publisher. And the anthology is all like queer historical romance. So for people interested in that, I definitely recommend picking up their books because they're really great.
Okay, nice. And you got to do a short story in there with one of your old school creative teams,
yep.
Which we can't find anymore, but we'll look at that and take a peek. So more editing though. You worked on Kim and Kim, and that was before you got to do She Said Destroy.
Yes, I started that. That was the beginning of 2018. I think I agreed to do that. So shortly after mine, after I'd done that, and Mags was in the book, Mags was looking for an editor to continue Kim and Kim, and asked me, and I was able to do that, and I think we ended up working really well together. I think it's a really, I'm very proud of the work everyone did in volume 3 of Kim and Kim. I think a lot of stuff came together. I think it's really solid, and I don't mean that in any way to disregard the work of
No, of
Katie
course.
Rex or any of the people before that. Much of the success of Kim and Kim Volume 3 is all built on the blocks that were set up in the previous volumes, but I think everyone working together were able to do something really special with that.
Nice, nice. Now we get to the one that that really has brought you some notice, I imagine. She Said Destroy. Not only, as I said, did it do well in here, but the buildup that you guys did for it was pretty good, because there's a lot of stuff out there when I jump on the internet, and you guys were able to draw my attention.
Oh, that's great.
And make me take a peek at previews. So you guys really did the hustle there. Now, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody, for those who aren't familiar with it, what the premise is?
Sure. There's a few ways we sort of tackle this. One of the ways we talk about it is it's like Sailor Moon meets Final Fantasy by way of Star Wars. What it's really at the core is it's these two goddesses, they're sisters, in the far future, and the rest of the pantheon's gone. It's just these final two, and it's their final confrontation as Brigid, the god of the sun, is looking to control everything under the sun, and the only way to do that is to get rid of her sister, Morrigan, the goddess of death. And it's very much a, in classic story terms, you know, it's that sort of like sieging the castle kind of story, where it's really about this like final conflict. And you know, that's sort of how I was looking at that, with a lot of sprinklings of Irish mythology added in.
Okay, because it very much is a fantasy sci-fi, or I guess a mythological sci-fi might be a better way of putting it. And of course, beautiful art by Liana. Does she do her own coloring?
She colored all of the covers, and then Rebecca Nolte colored the interiors. Rebecca is not only Irish, she had told me after the fact that she had gone to it was like St. Brigid Elementary when she was growing up. So she thought that was funny when she got that pitch.
So then there's the question: how did you get hooked up with these people? I assume you pitched the Vault without a creative team, or did you go to Liana first because it's the co-creator?
I went to Liana first, and then Vault, and like Liana was the first artist I talked to about this, and she said yes. Vault was the first publisher we talked to about this, and they said yes. It's not something that happens very much.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's not really a story that could easily be replicated. I definitely have older pitches that still haven't been picked up. So yeah, so I count my blessings with this one. But yeah, that's how we did it. And then we had ideas of people we wanted to work with. We had suggested letters and colorists. Rebecca was on our short list of colorists we wanted to work with on this. And we were more open with letterers, but we had an idea of like the kind of style we wanted to work with. And Adrian, who's the editor in chief over at Vault, is very particular with letterers. So we were able to sort of have that conversation, be like, this is kind of what we're looking for. And he was able to find someone who was absolutely excellent. We are so lucky we got Melanie Ujimori. She did such a fantastic job on the lettering, and especially towards the end, there were a couple of tight deadlines, and she was very generous and worked around her schedules with that.
That's great. And it sounds like Volt is actually very open to what you want as far as the series go. They're not just picking a random letter. They're going to listen to you and try and accommodate what you think would work best for the book.
Yeah, they were very much open to giving us, final say with who we were going to work with that, but they would give us these sort of suggestions, and it all worked out. Yeah.
Now, what was it? Was it 5 issues total?
It was 5 issues total.
Yeah.
Each issue was 22 pages, except the last issue was 24 pages. And again, to Vault's credit, they didn't bat an eye when we were like, we need 2 more pages for the last issue. They had no problem with it. So,
and 20 pages is standard for the big 2. So you guys are giving people more for their buck.
Yeah, no. It was nice. That was just how we proposed it, and there was never a broader discussion on that. So they really were very open to the ideas we had.
That's awesome. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the idea that things were flipped a little bit too. It wasn't your traditional, oh, death is always bad, light is always good. I mean, the light is the one that's winning and finally going to finish off the last of her opposition. And that's who we're following. So it was a really neat, fun premise. And I'm really glad that it did so well. And I hope it did well enough where we might see that universe again.
Yeah, we've Liana and I have talked about what we'd like to do next with that. I hope we get a chance to do more with that. It's sort of something that we'll discuss as things go on, but I definitely have ideas of what I'd like to do. I made sure the way it ended, it would be a satisfying conclusion if we never got to go back to it, but we could kind of jump all over the place. We could do a story that continues from where it left off. We could do a story in the past. We could do a story further in the future. There's a lot of places we could go with that. And I think that's really going to help if we get to revisit this in the near future to do another sort of unique story with it. Because if we end up ever doing more stuff with She Said Destroy, I don't want it to be another, sieging the castle kind of story. It would have to be another kind of story for me to want to do it, because I really don't want to retread or do something that would just make it feel like a typical sequel that's like the same story as the first one, but the stakes are higher kind of thing. Like, that's something I'm not interested in. So we left a lot of room to be able to tell new and different kinds of stories in that universe if we get the chance.
And I do appreciate that, because that's one of the problems with some books, that all it is another escalation. It's like, oh my God, that was so hard to beat, but look at the next threat. Yes. Whereas you have a world that you could just build on. I mean, especially going into the past, there's so many different stories and perspectives that you could focus on and see how things are going. So yeah. I'm glad you have it open. I am a little sad to hear there's nothing on the docket for the moment, but we'll keep our eyes open. Now, are you working on anything that might be coming up that we can talk about?
I'm working on a few things right now. There's not a lot I can talk too much about. Liana and I did co-write something that she had posted that on her Twitter in the last couple of days, and Paul Ezeketa is doing the art for it. So keep your eye out for that. Paul's doing an amazing job. I'm sure people are familiar with him from his work on Outcast. So yeah, that was exciting. One of the things I love about Liana is she wants to basically do and understand every aspect of a comic. So, she had actually approached me about co-writing this, sort of story with her, and wanted me to sort of like walk her through a lot of that. And, we ended up working really well together, co-writing.
Okay, well, yeah, you guys knew you were going to work well together, I assume. I mean,
Yeah.
you went really well with this one.
Right.
No, that's neat. I like the idea that she's delving into this other side because it can only help with any artwork that she does in the future because it's just more storytelling experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then I'm waiting on a contract for another gig that should be coming up in the next coming weeks. It would be for another miniseries.
Cool.
Yeah, so I can't talk about which publisher or anything like that is.
Yeah, we'll just have to follow your posts and see where the pieces lie. Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
So, well then, you did this the traditional small press way, even though you told us you got everything lined up perfectly, and no one should expect that with
Yes.
their project. You did do the console. You know what it's like going to the table, spending all day trying to sell a few books, talking to some people. There are a lot of people that I meet in here on a daily basis who want to be part of the comic book community. They want to create things. They've got ideas. Is there any piece of advice that you could give to someone who might be just starting out or just starting the con circuit? Anything that you learned?
I mean, some of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is if you're just starting out, even if you're not just starting out, breaking into comics isn't about telling your opus. It's not about your 80 issue run on your creator-owned superhero that no one's heard of before. If you really want to break in, it's about you need smaller things that you can move. One shots, zines, graphic novellas. You got to be dealing with things that are smaller. Getting into anthologies is also helpful. If you can do well at a table if you have items at different price points. So if you self-publish a self-contained one shot, if you get into an anthology, if you have like a zine, you can kind of have different items at different price points that would make your table more appealing. I've seen a lot of people, including myself, make these sort of mistakes of, here are the first 3 issues of this self-published comic I'm doing, and that's all I have at the table. And you're never going to make your money back. You're going to lose money at the table because you don't have items at different price points. And the best case scenario you're going to get is someone coming up to your table and being like, oh, I never heard of you before, but I'll pick up the first issue. And then you'll sell a decent amount of first issues and no one's buying the rest of the issues because you're not a known quantity, you don't have a following. And, if people are going to take a risk on you, it's just going to be for one issue. So
yeah, and you may never even see them again, even if they like it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice. And it's hard and it hurts people sometimes because people have these incredible ideas they really love and are passionate about, and they feel like they need 60, 80 issues or 12 issues even to tell it, and people don't have the time or patience for that if you're not a known quantity. It's a little different if you're doing web comics. Like if you're doing like a weekly web comic, you could tell stories that are like each comic is a one-off, but maybe you have a longer sort of continuity to go with it. But even that's kind of rare to pull off at this point. So definitely think small. The way I sort of view comics are for the most part, I think every story can be distilled down to a single panel, and it can expand it from there. So, if you only had one panel to tell the story, what would it be? If you only had one page, what would it be? If you had 4 pages, what would it be? If you had a whole issue, what would it be? And I think approaching comics like that, being able to distill them and tell stuff in a shorter form is also just beneficial to people when they're breaking in as well.
Okay, well, no, I like the way you described that part because I haven't heard it quite described that way. But starting with the one panel, or 1 page, 4 pages, it's a neat way of thinking about it rather than starting at 80 issues.
Yeah, and it's surprising how many people fall into that, and it's myself included when I was first starting. It's it's easy to think like, oh, so many of these comics go on for hundreds and hundreds of issues, and I only need 12, and to realize that's not a attainable goal, and to realize you're going to be dumping a lot of money into something that you're not going to get a return on at that point. So
and I think people are going to be surprised in small press about as to how long that's going to take. It's not going to be 12 months for those 12 issues. It's going to be 6 years.
Yeah, no, it takes a long time, and I mean, even doing something like She Said Destroy with a publisher, with publisher support behind it, getting a monthly comic that's 22 pages out the door in a month is it's a very time-consuming process. Like you are riding at the edge of your seat, those last like couple of weeks trying to make sure everything's proofed, everything looks good, putting proofs together and looking them over and being like, oh, well, maybe we should change that. Maybe this color needs to be fixed. Maybe we should move this balloon and like all that kind of stuff. It's a lot.
Yes, it is. But you guys got it done, and you got more coming. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Joe. I appreciate you spending some time. Everybody, he's calling all the way from New York. So that's getting late over there. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I have one more question for you before we go. This one is probably the most important one. Soft serve or traditional ice cream?
Soft serve.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We have an ongoing thing here at Empire. It's crazy. We did some posts about it, and people want to talk more about ice cream than they do about comic books. But I respect your opinion, even if I don't agree with it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate you joining us. Everybody go check out Liana's interview. It's on our YouTube, so you can see both the creative team right here talking about She Said Destroy. And of course, check out the section over by the wall comics because we have a little display of vault books, and it should be sitting right there. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time, and you enjoy your night.
Great. Thanks. You too.